Hello. This episode of Watch Out for Fireballs Dispatch is, of course, brought to you by our patrons, but I also want to do a quick call for action today. Very good and very close friend of mine, Jamie, was recently wrongfully fired from her job for requesting accommodation for disability. And she is suing the fuckers, but in the meantime has no job. She's an excellent person, does not deserve this. Nobody deserves this, obviously. And if we did not live in this hellscape, there would be a support system that wasn't just doing a GoFundMe. However, instead there is a GoFundMe because we live in hell. So if you could give this a glance, I'd really appreciate it. If you go to gofundme.com/F as in Frank /support-jamie-through-a-crisis. That would be awesome. And if you're able to give, that'd be great. If you're not able to, I totally understand. You could share it or retweet it, help broadcast it. She's doing pretty good. She has a goal and she's doing well, but we could use a little bit more help just kind of pushing her over the line to let her have money to live while this lawsuit goes forward and she looks for another job. So appreciate you. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, patrons. And thanks, Jamie. My name is Gary Butterfield.
My name is Cole Ross.
And you're listening to Watch Out for Fireballs Dispatch, the monthly Q&A topics listener response bro zone.
Yeah, I'm a little bit iffy on that last part, but I can go along with you. Just fine.
You know, just a couple of bros.
We are just a couple of bros present, but we speak.
Yep.
We mostly speak for ourselves. Yeah, it's a bro zone.
Yeah, just a couple of bros broing out.
Yeah. So we're going to be doing your Q's and A's. Gary already said all that stuff. Stick around toward the end. We're announcing the games we're covering in October, Spooktober, whatever we're calling it. Horror month, baby.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. AKA October.
What?
Is what we'll call that.
Like October, like Kathy when she gets scared?
No, just Oct.
Okay.
Like the way it's spelled.
Okay.
It's already spooky.
It is.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Sounds pretty spooky to me. Enjoying the spookitudes. I'm excited.
Me too.
For all the stuff that we're doing. And then also just, I love just being around the spooky stuff. Mm-hmm. Two, this fucking heat wave needs to die. I spent a bunch of time yesterday Googling like where to live now that everything is hot.
Yeah.
Just to figure out, because I moved out here for mild temperatures.
You did. You're sold a bill of goods.
I sold a bill of goods. I'd really like to never have a heat wave on me.
Yeah. I mean, you're probably looking at somewhere in like North Ontario, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No. I'll get us started here with Andrew, who has a comment, not a question. Mm-hmm. On the last unfilmable Ready or Not, which is a great movie, you were discussing whether a dumbwaiter could hold a human's weight. I can confirm the answer is a definitive yes. Back in high school, I worked in a retirement home restaurant. Yes, a restaurant that served exclusively old people. And there was a dumbwaiter to the basement where we stored food and supplies. Of course, this led to fun surprise opportunities. About once a month, someone would send the dumbwaiter upstairs with another person inside to jump out and surprise the person waiting upstairs. It was more of a fun surprise, as someone popping out of a dumbwaiter is just funny for everyone involved. So yes, it can hold quite a lot of weight. P.S. No, you cannot cut a person in half or anything. You need to close both safety doors for the dumbwaiter to go up and down.
Huh. Okay. Yeah. They have those like draw lattice doors like on old timey elevators, don't they?
Yeah. You could 100% still cut somebody in half though. Like if you could rig a microwave to work while it's open, you know,
you need to get those Mythbusters on there, or at least Jigsaw.
Yeah. Get Jigsaw on there. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I know that's not from a WAF thing, but Andrew wrote it in, and I wanted to address it. Yeah, it's a fun story. Yeah. I wouldn't go popping around a lot of corners at an establishment that mostly served the elderly. Just, yeah. Kind of seems
somebody
like
isn't seducing wealthy dowagers to get into their wills.
Some of us have to work for a living. Not all of us are preternaturally attractive to the octogenarians.
Yeah, how about this slab of relatively young Gary?
Oh man. Evan writes, this is a game question. We're in the game question zones, saying, I've recently purchased a decent computer for university, and it's given me access to a large amount of modding tools available for games. What are some of your favorite mods, and what are fun games to modify?
Yeah. My all-time favorite mod, there are two categories of mods that I love. One, restoring cut content and fixing old CRPGs. So like the Baldur's Gate mod that gives you a bag of holding when you start, or lets you stack arrows to 999, or takes the things that are kind of half cut content, things that are a little bit in there, and restores them. Those are great. Very, very cool gaming is magic moment for me when I read about all of the Fallout 2 cut content in the Fallout Bible, and then was able to mod it back in and go to the EPA and all these locations I just read the design documents for, and then some superhero put it together. The other game that I think has just phenomenal modding tend to be roguelikes. Darkest Dungeon has awesome mods, really creative play space with character designs, class designs, and then Binding of Isaac has really, really awesome mods, so much so that Repentance, which is the latest expansion, which is incredibly impressive, just a very generous expansion, is mostly based on a mod called Anti-Birth, which was incredible when it came out. Just really imaginative play space, nice. Fuck aroundery.
Yeah. The mod that I have had the most fun with has been the Dark Souls randomizer.
That's yeah.
That's kind of that's a no-brainer in terms of recommendation. That's what I would say. Dark Souls randomizer. There are obviously the big content mods. Go back in Bonfireside chat to our kind of mod season that we did. A few of those that are good, a few of those that are still on their way. But yeah, randomizer I think is the best bang for your buck right now.
Great mod.
Yeah.
Greg says, do you spend any time playing mobile games? And if you do you have any favorites? I tend to stay away from most mobile games as they use the free-to-play model. However, there are a few games I really enjoy either because you can buy the full game, such as Arkanoid vs. Space Invaders or Civilization Revolution 2, or the base game is complete enough that you don't need to spend any money, such as Elder Scrolls Blades or Fallout Shelter.
The answer is no. I gotta be honest, I fell off of mobile gaming in a big bad way after the Switch came out and was really good. Used to play a lot more, used to be a lot more interested in the space, but the fact that other more full-featured stuff ended up becoming so portable, combined with those shitty market conditions that Greg laid out, just kind of make it so it's difficult for me to say that I've done more than just kind of grazed at the Apple Arcade trough, which has brought me up some Kairosoft games, but that's the same game they've been making since 2010.
It's exactly the same.
Yeah.
There's the Dragon Quest of developers.
Yeah.
Similar. There are some games every once in a while something will pop up. I will get an urge because games that tend to lend themselves to mobile spaces, I like a lot of the time. I like tower defense. I like card games, things like that. So I will still browse, but it's been a while since I have really put some time into one, serious time into one. Out of those ones that Greg mentioned, Arkanoid versus Space Invaders is really good. I played through that when that came out. That's a great game. Yeah. And there are several games that I played to completion, or can still pick up and play. I really like, I talked about this before, Smash Hit is a real favorite. It's about tossing pinballs through panes of glass.
Yeah, you've talked about that.
That's a great game. I think that's a really, really fun game. I recently played a game called Night Skate that is an endless runner on a skateboard with really cool aesthetics.
Oh yeah, you sent me that. I've had a little bit of fun poking at that.
Yeah, there's good stuff out there. I avoid anything that is free to play.
Yeah.
Typically, I fell into, after we did Plants vs. Zombies, I fell into a Plants vs. Zombies 2 hole for a while and played that. But typically, I think free to play and good design can't really exist together. And the apologia for it, like it's not as bad as it could be, shit that you see really kind of irks me.
But it's not as good as it could be either. So
stop bending over backwards to make excuses for Genshin Impact.
Please.
I don't know. Like it could be worse, but demand better.
Please. Let me actually make two earnest recommendations, like outside of ones we've talked about before.
Scared
like
Stupid and Goes to Jail.
obviously you want Goes to jail. Yeah, no, those would be the two of them. Goes to Camp is also really good. That's kind of a
little too serious as the first one. It's like he has that Sure I'm Glad It's Raining song where he's crying and stuff. He doesn't get lightning powers at all.
I rate every earnest expansion, every earnest sequel.
ECU. Yeah. On E+.
Yeah. I rate all of them by how long it takes him to get superpowers. It's an origin story. No, but a game that I really enjoy is called Freeways, where you are designing on hand, like you're finger painting freeway interchanges. So you have basically on the edge of the screen all of these incoming, like, traffic sources, and then the places that they're trying to get to, and you have to design like off ramps and stuff to maximize the flow of all of them. Each little car has its own little AI, and it's all, you're designing smaller squares on a bigger grid. So as you're working, you're designing this much bigger freeway system, and it's really neat. And then for a developer recommendation, anything by Zach Gage.
Sure.
Just generally
Spell Tower.
Really hard to go to fuck with Zach Gage. You get Spell Tower. You have ridiculous fishing. Really bad chess is very fun. It is chess with non-standard amounts of
random
pieces. Yeah. Pocket Run Pool is very good. Flip Flop Solitaire, good Sudoku. Like, he's been on this tear recently of just like, okay, here's this really standard game, Solitaire, Sudoku, Pool. What can we do to actually make this a lot more intuitive and fun? Let's speed up the play of this. And has done a really good job, I think. Yeah,
he's great. Yeah, I would second that.
Yeah,
for sure.
Holland says, I have more than one friend that has signed up for Xbox Game Pass and has not purchased a single game in like a year because there is so much to play. Similarly, I recently upgraded my PlayStation Plus to the second tier for $25 and now have like 8 games that have been on my backlog, so I don't see myself making any purchases anytime soon. My question is, how do you see these trends affecting the development, scale, and sales of video games in the future? It seems wholly unsustainable to me. For example, what happens to the developers of Stray when their game is free to play on day one? But I also don't know everything that's going on in the background. I get a similar feeling, Holland. I don't know the specifics, and I think that is actually part of the problem. And what we're go good.
Because the specifics a lot of time are out there for this stuff. When this discourse reared up with Epic, putting out their games for free, and my understanding, and this is a half remembered article I read, so I'm not an expert on this at all, but is that it's pretty lucrative for developers. Like, they get a big guaranteed chunk of money, which is really rare in an indie game space. So my understanding is, in terms of financially for developers, it is actually better than rolling the dice on like Steam.
Right.
That is what I have read. I don't know that that's true, but my understanding was that at the time there was because intuitively it sounds bad.
Yeah.
It sounds like race to the bottom mobile stuff, again, but is that counterintuitively, it's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
For people. I don't know. Again, I don't have the source for that though, because I didn't prep for this. That is my memory though.
Yeah. The thing that worries me is recreating what we're seeing with video streaming, which is it can be very lucrative for a handful of developers at the beginning when they're flush with cash for this new initiative and what have you. And by they, I mean the platform holders, right? So Microsoft, Epic, etc. if that stops being sustainable and there is very little way to actually account for what is generating revenue, all you need is one asshole who comes in, like that guy who took over the Warner HBO merger and says, but reality TV is where it's at. We're going to prioritize Discover. And then boom, all the cool stuff goes away.
Yeah.
Right. So like it can be, my bigger problem with this is more just sustainability in the long run, and how do they decide what ends up being kind of funded and featured and brought there, especially for new games. I'm not so much worried about it for old games. If it's a way for studios and developers to monetize stuff, reliably.
Bethesda wasn't making money off of Redguard.
No.
Before this.
Yeah.
Like, so whatever they got in order to put that on Game Pass today is gravy.
Yes.
Heretic wasn't making tons of money.
Right.
I don't know about long term, but I do think that like in the short term, it's interesting. The thing that stands out to me in reading about indie game development is how fucking Thunderdome it is. There's that like heartbreaking thread from the developer of Where the Water Tastes Like Wine, which is a game I don't like very much. Like I was very disappointed in that video game.
Right.
So I don't begrudge its lack of success as an artistic thing, but the thread from the developer being like, hey, here are the economic realities of putting out a game on Steam, and just laid out all of the effort and money they put into marketing it, and then the return on it and how paltry that was. And I can see the appeal, even if it doesn't last forever, of just like, Stray probably would have done fine, because it's a game featuring a cat, and people love that. But like a lot of these people, I'm happy they're getting a payday. Maybe in the future the platforms will lose interest in them, and that's, I think you're probably right. But for now, I think it is a weird kind of unexpected good.
Yeah, no.
That wouldn't happen otherwise. Like it just, discoverability is so shit. If we've gotten to the point where discoverability, the key for it, the solution is give people, like, you already have the thing. You don't have to discover it. Like, you already have the new U2 album.
Yeah.
Then maybe that's where we're at right now.
Yeah. Just
with
every
discoverability.
Every month, the big mama bird comes down from Microsoft and all the new games into you. Yeah.
And that sounds very like bad, but then I think about like, I don't want to spend tons of time looking up what games to play. It's very difficult. Discoverability is hard, and I don't know the solution for it. And a lot of times I find in the discourse around it, the solutions for it annoying, because they tend to take a very sanctimonious tone about how people are not doing their jobs. Like, it is irresponsible for a website to cover a Assassin's Creed game, because everyone knows it, but they don't know about this itch.io game. And like, yes, but also, I don't know, like that feels like wish casting, like what the world could be. And even then you would need to have 1,000 Kotakus to cover all of there's just so much stuff. Yeah. It makes sense to aim for the thing most people would be interested in already. And it's just a very complicated problem, like that it has threads and lots of different stuff.
Yeah. So I suppose I fall in with you. I'm happy that it exists as an alternative for developers, to get in and have a bit of a secure deal. I just, my concern is long-term, but that would be a long-term concern with the existing model on Steam anyway,
Yeah. I think it's going to come up kind of regardless.
Yeah. You can't act like that's not also putting weird pressures on developers and on the actual output that comes through.
Yeah, it's a sickness with many, many, many symptoms and causes. It is just it's fucked up, and now the stray people can probably, maybe somebody there can buy a house they couldn't buy before.
Maybe they can fund the next project.
Yeah, even better.
Yeah.
James says, "Hey boys, hope." I just put some spin on that. James didn't put that there. Hope all is well with you. Quick question for Gary. What are your tips for getting into Magic the Gathering? I bought a couple of pre-made Challenger decks a few years ago, which have sat patiently in my games cupboard ever since. I've tried some YouTube videos for learning, but found them a little long-winded and obtuse. I'm sure the right answer is go to a gaming shop and get someone to teach you, but I'm interested to hear if you have any other advice. I do have other advice, and it's not go to the gaming shop and let people teach you, even though that might be good and people might be cool about it. I would also be intimidated by that. My advice is to, and I don't know absolutely for certain that you can still buy them because Magic put out Arena, but from like 2012 to 2016, I want to say, Wizards of the Coast put out a new Magic the Gathering video game that was called like Magic 2012, Magic 2013, that are really good tutorials for Magic. And if you can't purchase those legally anymore, I recommend you pirate them. If it's not, available to purchase legally, there's no moral crime. And have those computer systems teach you to play the game.
Yeah.
Because they're really good at easing you in. So
that sounds like good advice to me. If I was looking to, I would want a computer that would keep track of the rules and stuff for me, at least at the start.
It's also cool because it's a way to play Magic against an AI.
Oh, yeah.
Arena is cool, and Arena is, you can get a lot of value out of Arena without buying cards from it. But also you're playing against real people, and that has an inherent fraughtness when I'm learning.
Yeah.
It feels bad. I don't want to be an idiot.
I don't want to waste somebody's time, there's probably matchmaking at play based on quality of cards or your win record or whatever. But like, if I'm just figuring out like, okay, I'm going to waste this person's time by being a bad partner. It'd be like showing up to experts night at the tennis court, with a racquetball racket.
Like several years ago, I went to a sealed deck Magic tournament with Riff in Brighton. And I placed in it. And the reason I placed is because I accidentally ran out the clock on a guy because I didn't know enough of the current rules.
Oh, no.
And he was being very helpful, like helping me through things. Yeah. But I just ended up like, getting a decision victory against him and it wasn't malicious,
right?
But don't be me. Like, you don't want to do that. That's discourteous.
Yeah. Huh. Well, good on that person for being a good sport.
They're being gracious about it.
Yeah.
It was good. And if you're out there and you're listening, I apologize.
Alicia writes, do you ever sit and read through a game's end credits? Not for games that have post-credit gameplay or a cutscene especially, but just like get to the end, then sit there and read the names of the people who worked on the game as they scroll by. Are there reasons why you might or might not? For example, an achievement, the end music, visuals, really liking the game, doing it out of respect for the developers who made it, etc. Watching credits.
I never do this. If I want to know a specific person, like if they're involved, or if I want to see like a voice actor, yes. But this is, I can't do this, even though these names have meanings. I respect the people who make the art that I like. Knowing that, like, hearing a random name that I don't know may as well be noise.
Yeah.
To me, like I will look up those associations if I want to make like a stronger mimetic connection.
Yes.
I'll do that later through text.
Yeah. Moby Games is an excellent way for to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will, if I finish a game and there's, still like note taking stuff I want to do, or honestly, if I'm just feeling kind of lazy and want to take a minute to sit there and, figure out what I'm going to do next, I will just leave the credits running and listen to the music while I fuck around on my phone. But I do not make the conscientious decision to sit down and read all of the names. If I know a game is crowdfunded, something I like doing is speeding through to that section and just seeing if anybody I recognize funded the game, But yeah, that's about it.
Yeah. I've let credits play while I've gone and like made a sandwich or whatever.
Yeah.
Like I just, but I don't watch them. It's not a point of pride or anything, not a principled stance. Doug asks, how much does the quality of a game's ending affect your view of the overall quality? If an Elden Ring gives you scores of hours of fun, but stumbles on the last boss or cutscene, does that sour your enjoyment that preceded it? I feel like this is something we've talked about a little bit before. And then this is also something that's very interesting because it comes up a lot in the Slack in discussion of Elden Ring and in Elden Ring stuff in general, because there are a lot of people who don't like the ending of that game. I generally think an ending can matter. Like you can have a sour taste in your mouth, after things, but typically the lasting sour taste is if like the ending underlines something that is a flaw throughout the entire game.
Yeah.
For me, like the end of Control felt a little bit bad to me because it really was just like, listen, this combat is shallow and repetitive. Here, tons of it. Like, don't you remember how shallow and repetitive this combat is? It's all we're going to do for the entire ending.
Yeah.
That just reminded me of the weakest part of the game. But typically it doesn't bug me or anything. It can matter for a narrative. Like if something doesn't stick the landing, that feels bad in any narrative to me. You know.
Yeah, it's hard for me to say that like a bad ending cutscene or a bad, narrative note at the end, like strictly related to the story. It's hard for me to say that spoils the entire deal. I've generally said endings, it's not the highest thing on my rubric. It's not worth the most points. The thing that sticks out most for me is, does the game squander the goodwill that it built up, not with the actual like end of sequence, but like with the back third or the back quarter, the big slog of a run up. A lot of games don't have the steam to actually make it over that hump. It's very rare that they actually do. And that will, make me question more whether this was worth going through at all. Than just a cutscene or a beat. I think that the squandering goodwill is the bigger issue here.
Yeah, a big uptick in friction, which is like a thing tons of games do because they sacrifice fun on the altar of challenge. Like we know we need to uptick the difficulty of the game. We don't have a lot of ideas for how to do it that won't make this fucking tedious. We'll move us on to media questions.
Sure.
Here, Bo says, what are some of your favorite, obviously Canadian or Quebecois pieces of art, specifically art objects which could never be mistaken for American or European? I'm from Montreal, a city which is home to many game devs, and despite our country being disproportionate producers of media, given our size, I rarely get to experience what Canada or Quebec broadly are seen as by our neighbors south of the border. If you'll allow me the sin of recommendations, the 20th century is an insanely Canadian in a way no other movie I've ever seen is. And Lydia Kapinski is a wonderful local indie Quebecois artist who released a second record earlier this year. Merci.
Thanks, Bo.
Yeah, thanks, Bo.
Yeah.
I don't have a good answer for this. I wish I did. There are tons of Canadian media that I love, but it doesn't feel specifically Canadian to me. Most of my favorite bands are Canadian, like depending on which days,
That's a big deal.
Yeah, but they don't, they don't feel culturally Canadian to me.
Yeah. Kind of the same, two bands that I really enjoy, Sunset Rubdown, obviously, and Associated Acts. You introduced me to them. They are Quebecois, I believe. Godspeed You Black Emperor is a band that I very much enjoy. Extremely Quebecois, but also it's hard to tell that by listening to them. So I couldn't say I like this for X, Y, and Z reasons, and X, Y, and Z map onto where they're from. So that is difficult to say. And Canadian media in general, like, I don't know. I said this to a Canadian person once, and it's like, oh, we're from Canada. And I say, oh, I like Trailer Park Boys, or like I like Letterkenny. Like, oh, okay.
They just not. I could. It'd be like it's probably how some Portlanders feel about Portlandia.
Yeah.
As a thing. Like I get it. I think Sunset Rubdown. The people from all over, but I think that they're from Montreal.
Yes,
is where Spencer Krug is from, as opposed to, but the specifically
Montreal's in Quebec.
Yeah. Or more specific. I just didn't want anyone to get confused. And obviously, like that group, that constellation of bands, the New Pornographers, who I believe are from Vancouver, big fans, and then Kids in the Hall, hugely influential and huge to me. But again, I don't know what Canadians think of it. And Kids in the Hall, I think, is pretty uniquely Canadian in terms of sensibility, but I don't know. And I don't even know if I just said an incredibly offensive thing. So I don't know. We don't know Canada.
It's one of those things where it does throw me off to watch the original Kings of the Hall, Kids in the Hall,
Kings of the Hall,
to watch like the episodes as they aired in Canada, specifically because what we got here on Comedy Central was so cut up. They took out so many things that were so racy, like just a ton of Scott Hall content was cut out because they're like, there's no way this is going to play in America. So so I associate that with being Canadian just because they're less, at least from our point of view, less prudish about the kind of comedy that can go on. But
Canada rocks. I love so much stuff from Canada.
Agreed.
Bands, TV, YouTubers. Canada's great.
Oh man, let's not sing an anthem to war. Let's
let's anthem to peace.
Yeah. Okay. Maya writes, I'm on a kick of reading horror fiction, and it had me thinking of horror applications dependent on medium. It's interesting how things like the jump scare cannot be utilized in the written medium as effectively as on the screen. What do you think about the different ways horror can articulate in the written word, and which are most effective for y'all? Let's see. Jump scares hard to do in horror. Like, that's not how that works. However, in
text.
Well, yes.
Jump scare is extremely easy to do in horror.
Yeah,
in fact, it's probably the only genre that has them.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, in Shallow Hal, it scared the shit out of me.
Okay, sorry. I'm on a bunch of muscle relaxers. So
yeah.
I'm gonna take the medication excuse on that one. Mm-hmm. Yes. Jump scares, specific to visual medium. However, manga does jump scares quite a bit. They do that very well. That is kind of Junji Ito's trick.
I love it when that happens, but I have a very different experience without the sound element. Like, if I turn a page to a reveal in a Junji Ito comic and see some fucked up shit, which is a big reason why I'm there, I love it. I don't get a jolt.
Yeah.
I don't feel fear from reading things.
Yeah.
I never have. I love reading horror stuff. Like, I love horror comics, manga. I love horror short stories. None of it ever scares me.
Yeah.
I need to have a sound, I think, is the thing that bypasses my filters.
Yeah. I'm pretty much right there with you. I love horror quite a bit. I think that it just operates on such a different level. Like, the trick for horror pros, in my opinion, like, you're not going to get anything really good out of an omniscient narrator in it. I think that it needs to be, from a particular point of view, and the reader needs to be putting stuff together alongside the character. So that, like, there can be a reveal, he was taking the Jack Candy thing. He was taking a bite out of the sweetest nectarine and the juices ran down his chin, but then he realized it wasn't a nectarine. It was a human head,
Yes.
Not scary, but like something that gets in there and subverts expectations. I think that's the way that horror works best, in addition to just cool ideas. Like, oh yeah, this is a killer idea for a monster, or for that particular, kind of thing to happen in this particular scene,
a concept or a fucked up place.
Yes.
Which is, even in media that is more visceral to me, that's a lot of what I'm getting from it.
Same.
Mediocre horror to me will be saved based on cool concepts.
Yes.
I want to see fucked up little dudes running around being fucked up.
Yeah.
And I love elevated horror. I love it when there's more to think about than that. But also, something kind of shitty will still be good if there's a fucked up dude about. And I'm like, man, that's a fucked up dude.
Yeah. Brahms the boy.
Yeah, look at that boy. Like, hell of a boy you got there. That boy is right. Like, that will, I'm a simple enough carb that ends up being a big part of my appreciation. Transcends text.
Yes.
Jared says, hey guys, what do you think about imagination when it relates to games and media at large? I work in a school and see kids doing the classic who's better, but instead of powers or skills, they're talking about back blings and emotes. Time is monopolized by things that seem meant to only occupy the brain as long as you're looking at it. Then it goes away. I'm not trying to say things were better back in my day. Things constantly change, and your discussion on Bonfireside Chat about challenging media gave me a genuine hopefulness about this. Just curious about your all's thoughts.
For that last one, I think Jared is specifically referring to the interview episode with Open Mike Eagle. If you're listening to this and you have access to Bonfireside Chat but don't listen to it, that interview is worth listening to, specifically because we do range outside of Elden Ring from soft stuff. Yeah. Would point people in that direction. It's toward the beginning of the episode. It's about a half hour. I would say that is worth listening to, because that man is smart.
Yeah, Mike's great.
What do you think backbling is, Gary?
Oh boy,
I didn't know. I had to look it up.
Bedazzled butt plug. Wait, is that what backbling is?
Yeah. It's the one that has like the jewel. Just kind of the standard.
I've seen such a thing.
Yeah. I've heard tell. No, backbling is specifically it's a piece of equipment from Fortnite. Yeah.
Shit.
So because it's a third person game and you're looking at their back, like the back bling is the customizable cosmetic item that you will see. I don't know about comparing them,
Ooh, yeah. Well, I guess that's what the emotes are being like. What wins? I guess just which one's cooler.
Yeah.
And I guess the emotes are also probably Fortnite emotes in that section. So I think what Jared, talking about is like, as opposed to being like Hulk or Superman in a general sense, being like backpack or little baby angel bat wings. And I don't necessarily think that's more shallow. But it's just very alien to me. Like, I feel like there's something there that I can't see.
Yeah.
I don't know how I would compare such a thing. Like, I don't know a rubric for that. Like, it makes me feel like I'm like unfrozen caveman Gary bullshit. Like, I got no idea. This has made me blue screen. I got nothing.
I got hypnotized.
Go.
This seems strange to me, especially with Fortnite being such a licensed property machine. Like, all those videos that have been posted once they added Dragon Ball Z stuff in, and you just have Goku flying along and then whipping out an AK and gutting somebody down and then hitting him with a lightsaber. Like, it seems like it's perfectly handmade for playing out a lot of the same kind of like conversations or make believe that I would have as a friend that I would have with friends back in the day. I'm talking like little kid, like 7, 8, 9, something like that. I don't know. So like role of imagination and stuff, it's very hard to see. It's hard to say because I don't want to be in a position to say the thing that the kids are getting enjoyment out of is, because they're getting a different kind of enjoyment than I did, that is therefore inferior. I would counter and say that at least my understanding of this could be outdated, and I may just have old brain, but like for every one of those discussions about, Fortnite emotes and stuff like that, like kids still love to play Minecraft, right?
Yeah. There's something still there that like, that's the same.
Yeah.
100%. That is like creative and cool. The same way that, when other kids our age had Legos and Technics.
Yeah. I got no problem if kids imaginative play, is filtered through these different kinds of things because, we didn't play karate. We played Power Rangers when I was a kid. We didn't play Cops and Robbers. It was, we were different robots from Mega Man,
There's also an element too of like litigating what's cool is always, or oftentimes the subtext of a lot of these discussions anyway.
Yeah.
Like you can dress it up in like, people would be like, who's faster, the Flash or Superman? And that question is meaningless. It doesn't, it could not have less impact. Yeah. What does this do for the greater good? I said it was interesting, but it's really, it's a roundabout. I think at the heart of that is like, which one do you think is cooler?
Yeah.
It comes down to like teamsmanship and fighting your Pokemons and such. And there's not, to me, that big a difference in that core element between fighting Fortnite backpacks. I don't know why backpack is the only thing I can think of for back bling. Maybe it's because something people wear on their back and there aren't a lot of other things. But backpack fight in Fortnite, is also about which one looks coolest. It's aesthetics and instinct and stuff like that, cultural association and teammanship, like all that stuff I think is still at play.
Yeah.
It just a little deeper and a little bit harder to relate to.
Yeah. No. I just want to focus on kids not paying attention to me, because if they start coming after me, I'm not going to be able to get away.
Well, in Common Core. Like, what the fuck, dude? Like, that must be stopped.
Just do math the way I did.
Yeah. Ugh. Why? How could somebody learn a skill a different way? How dare?
Oh, how dare they? Let's see. Moving on to show questions. This friggin' guy asked a question. This will be pretty quick because we have answered this pretty frequently. But says, hello. Maybe this is a crazy thing to suggest, but have you ever considered revisiting games that you've already discussed for the show? I'm asking because titles like Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines and Disco Elysium are regular touchstones in conversations and themselves very good episodes, and wondering if you think it would add value or maybe just be fun to revisit and talk about some of your all-time Hall of Famers.
Yeah, we talked about this. This is a possibility someday.
Mm-hmm.
We talked, Bloodlines is my number one because it's back when we thought the show should be like an hour and 15.
Yeah.
And that game is longer and deserves more attention than that. Disco Elysium is a little bit harder because I feel like we basically got it out.
Yeah. The only thing that complicates that is the director's cut stuff. But
yeah, it would be fun.
Mm-hmm.
Like I would love an excuse to play Disco Elysium again, play the director's cut for work, and have content on it. I would really like that. And I think it would make a good episode. It's just a different, like the show aims for different stuff, I think.
Yeah.
Than that. So, long answer, yes with an F, short answer, no with a but,
Yep.
Trevor says, you've mentioned MMOs in the past and how they don't particularly fit in with the WoW format. For what's worth, I do agree with you. To be honest, I think you'd almost have to dedicate an entire show to properly cover any modern MMO. If you're given the time and money to give it the kind of coverage you'd be satisfied with, what MMO would you consider dedicating an entire show to? Literally the only one that I don't have any interest in MMOs. Enough people have told me Final Fantasy 14 is good that I'm curious, but then other people have been like, yeah, it's like 70 hours before it gets good. Yeah. Like you have to get to the third expand. And I'm like, that sucks. Even if it wasn't for the show, I think that is philosophically vile and a bad design decision. I think that indicates something that is low quality to me. So yes, I believe it gets good. But yeah, I don't believe that you should pay a price in bad to get to the good in games. Yeah. So I don't know. I guess it would be that one just because nothing else is really sounds cool. But I also wouldn't want to do that. Whatever horrible Wishmaster is like presenting us with this, like Trevor, I'd want to escape or say their name 3 times and put them back in the model in the attic or whatever.
It's yeah, I don't know. I think about this from like, is there one that I would even enjoy doing? Probably not. I think I'm a little bit more amenable to MMO stuff than you are. But at least I have a more history with it. But like, I think about the show that I would make about an established MMO like that, and then I think, oh, there's nothing that I would have to say that is better or more insightful than the other shows that exist about it, right? Like, oh, that's a niche that is filled in by so many other people who are way more invested, a lot less like cranky about social appointment play that is required for stuff like that. Like, I think about organizing a raid, and I immediately want to just like close all the curtains, turn off my phone, hide under the covers, and wait for daylight. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is the problem for tomorrow. I got to organize a raid. There'd be so much catching up with just the basic vocabulary. Yeah. Even if you and I started, like, let's say they announced a new MMO, tomorrow, and you and I are like, okay, we're covering this from the ground floor. There's so much vocabulary with the genre that we don't have. Even you, like with your EverQuest days, like
20 years ago.
Surely there have been advancements in the form. We just would be missing so much. It feels like like an MMO show is a time and place that we have missed. We got into this right when like doing a retro show was still viable and good. Yeah. And then, kind of change with the times, but there are times and places for like starting these kind of concerns. And I feel like that time and place is basically past if it's not already your bailiwick.
The show that I think would be interesting would be like all of the old, just kind of discredited or tossed aside MMOs. Like, find people who are really active in the community back then and talk to them about the game and just have them, describe it from like a historical perspective. Like, here's this event that happened, or like here was broadly the arc. Like, I don't know. I would like to hear somebody talk about Auto Assault. Like, that was a weird game.
I bet you such a thing exists on YouTube.
I'm positive such a thing exists on YouTube. Yeah.
And if we were doing it, like, it would have to be, there'd be so much curation.
Yeah.
Like, an interesting thing about when projects on YouTube and podcasts get considered is that like podcast is a quick turnaround medium, at least, for us.
Yes.
Something like that, you'd want to avoid Chris Farley show stuff. Like you wouldn't just get a random guest who played Ragnarok online, because you wouldn't want to accidentally back your way into someone who's just like, oh man, it was so cool. And with no additional elaboration on that. You would need to curate it so you had people who were thinking about the game. Like you'd need to find people who had the context you were missing to do that, which would be really difficult. And I imagine if there is a YouTube, and I'm sure there is, that just does dead MMO worlds. I know there are like documentaries and long form journalism features. They come out with, they take months of prep, not a week.
No, like down the rabbit hole, they're doing or have just released like a 5-hour piece about EVE Online, Like I'll watch that. That sounds cool. Sounds more fun than reading than actually playing EVE Online did. But yeah, I'm talking about I'm positive that kind of thing exists, and it'd be so hard to research because like a lot of the stuff is just gone. Like Vanguard Saga of Heroes. Okay, that was made by the people who made the original EverQuest. They wanted to like get back to basics. It only had active support for about like 3 years. And closed down after 7. We can talk about that weird shit going back, but
it's very interesting to us, but I'm going to let somebody else know that stuff.
Yeah, I'm not going to do the work for it.
Yeah.
John writes, what does utopian success look like for you as podcasters? Do you want a large network, such as what Bill Simmons did with The Ringer? Something smaller? Keep up the good work.
What's The Ringer?
It's a network of sports podcasts and shows that is headed up by Bill Simmons, kind of a cranky sports commentator guy. Think like
combat basketball.
Combat basketball. Yeah, just
a combat basketball to mutant league scale. How cranky is he?
Think like like Gimlet but for sports, right?
Okay.
Or Crooked but for sports, right?
The dwarf?
That's something like that.
I'm sorry.
That's fine. Man, that sounds like a very unenviable thing. I don't want to be in charge of all those people and also like investing that kind of money in bigger stuff. I'm really happy with the scale that we're at. Honestly, kind of.
It's real good for us right now. The idea when you scale up like that is you hire people to do those things. Like it wouldn't just fall on our shoulders. I also have the dread of the amount of work it would take, but like it wouldn't be like waking up one day and you're Bill Simmons, the Ringer manager. And you just have to do everything yourself. Like you would have people hired, and that has some appeal primarily. And this is not virtue signaling. Some douchebag is going to say this is what this is. Something I really like that I was thinking about recently, I had cause to think about, is how, and I'm not going to bat for this man, but how Kevin Smith handled his success, which was, I'm going to make all of my close friends and people who I love secure financially.
Yeah.
Like everybody who is my friend gets to be in my movies, and I'm going to give them TV shows and podcasts onto my network, and they're going to be able to live. I would love that.
Yeah.
Like being at that level where I could take, my friends and people who I care about, and like, I would love to be able, and I'm not saying they want this. This is, I don't want this to sound patronizing,
right.
But like being able to say like, Will, you're Guppy full time. You're Guppy. That's your thing. You handle it. I'll be on it, but this is your whole thing.
Yeah.
Ludicrous, because that product does not appeal to people on that level. It's really good. I love that show, but it's not, I think it's very funny, and but it's not that kind of thing. But I would love to be able to, in terms of my growth, that is what I would want to be able to do. I'm fine. I don't need any more money or success. I'm good. I want to be able to lift people up. Who I care about. Less somebody think I'm being trying to be Mother Teresa. I'm not talking about, empower. I'm not teaching kids to code. I want to lift up people who I know and already love.
Yes.
So that would be my utopian vision.
Yeah, that's a good answer. You know, it's one of those things like when you look at anything about starting up a business, right? Or look at anything about like, okay, you're going to make your own thing and you're going to go your own way. First of all, that is a ludicrous space to try and do any research in. We recently incorporated as an LLC, and I've been just seeking out anything I can about like small business administration kind of stuff, right? It is all, if you are not careful, you're going to get a bunch of like hustle grind set kind of shit, and that's the fucking worst. But the big distinction is between like a lifestyle business and like a business. It's like, oh, you just want to start a business that you run and make things and make just enough to like live comfortably and feel secure. Well, that is obviously beneath contempt. You know,
you should be pumping this up enough to sell it.
Yeah,
you know, you should be pumping this chicken full of steroids so it gets a bigger yield. And I don't have any interest in that. I just want to not go to an office.
That would be great.
So someday I would not mind buying a house.
No,
I don't need to own two. I don't need to own a boat.
Right.
I don't need anything like that. That's all, you know, nonsense extravagance I don't want.
Yeah.
And even then, I just want to not get rid of stuff when I have to move. Yeah. If I could just rent this place forever, I'd probably also be okay.
Yep.
I just hate having to get rid of half my shit every 2 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's I have extremely modest tastes.
Yes.
But I do really like the idea of giving back to people. Like I'm lucky enough that like I know lots of remarkable people who I think are genuinely really good. And I recognize that like my success, like I think that we're good at this, but I also think it would be stupid to not chalk up a lot of this to luck. And like fortune is to be shared.
Yeah.
You know, I can't take it with me. I can't make kids. You know, why wouldn't I want to spread that out?
Yeah.
You know, what else am I here for? You know, what other purpose could I have in life other than that? You know? So I just, so Gary B, not Gary V. That's the slogan. Mindset, not grind set.
Very good.
Lightning round questions.
Let's do.
Gotham, pronounced Gotham. I don't know if it would have the H there as well, or if it's supposed to be pronounced like.
Oh, they gave us a pronunciation at the end of that. P.S. My name is
Gotham. So Gotham says, apologies, Gotham. I was listening to the Final Fantasy VII episode from back in 2013, where Cole said, when we cover Final Fantasy 12 in 2022. My two questions. Was this month's scheduling intentionally based on this? Two, when will Cole use his Oracle powers for evil?
No, we had a couple of people point that out to us, which is very funny. If you're giving us far too much credit if you think that is intentional.
Yeah. Somebody also Nat sponsored that episode. That would take coordination and us knowing Nat 9 years before we knew Nat or knew of Nat, you know?
Right.
So yeah, this is maybe Nat. That'd be a good question for Nat. Maybe Nat did that.
Yeah, maybe.
But we didn't.
We did not. Tyler writes, inspired by an episode of the Insert Credit podcast, what is the In Rainbows of video games? I recuse. I don't know. I know that's a Radiohead album. I know it was one of the first like pay what you want kind of deals. I listened to a couple tracks and I was like, this is kind of boring, and put it down. So yeah, take that as you will.
Be mad at me if you want. I think Radiohead is one of those bands that's like generally like they seem good. I think they're on the forces of good. I find them personally not to my taste, and I think that they're pretty overrated.
Yeah.
Yell at me if you like. I understand. There are lots of like darling bands. I feel that way about Yola Tango, much to the consternation of my bandmates. Just bands I don't like that much. I've never remembered a Ted Leo song after I've heard it. I don't know how people do it. They feel like memory challenges to me. Yeah. So yeah, I cannot answer, sadly.
Can't answer.
Luna says, go to hot sauces. And a recommendation for somebody who prioritizes taste over pure spiciness.
I am so basic at this. I am so basic.
Are you? Yeah. Okay. You bring the basic and then I will give the advanced class on hot. That's not true at all. I'm going to name two things that are going to be extremely fucking intermediate level.
Yeah. I'm not shopping from the adult themed hot sauces. I'm not doing stunt sauces.
Sure.
I'm pretty much getting whatever
asshole
is
ripper.
Yeah.
Scott Dilbert's father finger up the ass. Like brand hot hot juice.
Yeah, no, I'm not doing anything like that. Just this is fucking gobsmacking, is what I'm going to say. I keep Tapatio around, I keep sriracha around, and I use I when I can, I use Thai chili sauce instead of ketchup.
I thought you were going to say like you mix up some black pepper and water. Just call it a day. I think good enough for me.
No, I like, Tapatio is just the right amount of acid versus like a little bit of heat to make stuff pop. Sriracha is good if you need something that's a little bit spicier that'll cling to something. And for dipping, it's really hard to go wrong with Thai chili. So
yeah, those are all good. I love Tapatio in terms of like basic Mexican hot sauce. That's my favorite. So like on an egg or something like that, I'm real into a Tapatio.
Yeah.
I really like gochujang, which is I think a Korean sweet hot sauce. I put that on basically everything. I really love something called tiger sauce, which I haven't been able to get for a while, but is barely hot. It's mostly just like tangy and kind of spicy, but not hot.
Yeah,
taste spice. That stuff is very good.
That's
and then there's a Portland one. The name is escaping me right now. It's a habanero. It's very chunky. People who live here will go crazy. You can get it everywhere. I've seen it on YouTube and everything like that. If I want something very very hot but still has good flavor, that is what I will do.
Yeah. If I only ever run into these, I need to just buy a bottle of it to keep around and experiment with stuff. But like if I'm at a restaurant and they have like a green hot sauce, like a tomatillo sauce, I really like that mixture of like tangy and smoky kind of deal.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
I was trying to search for this hot sauce here, but there's a big Portland hot sauce festival. That is polluting my Google results. To me, it is reasonable to have like 10 hot sauces.
Yeah.
In your cabinet, like they taste different and it generally will add a lot.
Different applications. Yeah.
So yeah, hot sauce is great.
Yeah. Decca writes, I have to imagine that this has been answered in the past, but what is the origin of the name Duckfeed? That was from the first episode of Those Damn Ross Kids show that I did with my brother way back. Just making up folksy country sayings. Say, even dropping the G's off of things. And instead of saying like, oh, I'm just throwing stuff out there, I'm just, throwing spaghetti at the wall, saying, oh, I'm just feeding ducks here. I'm throwing stuff out and seeing what they pick up. Also, I like birds. So duck was, and also RSS feed, podcast feed kind of deal. Seemed to make sense at the time.
Sure. Yeah. And I just have to live in it. I'm just joking. I had no problems with the name. Yeah. It's Secret Aardvark was what I was looking for before.
Oh, is that
so? If you've already commented, delete. If you already added me, undo it.
Yep.
Secret Aardvark.
What's Craig say?
Craig says, do you guys have any lesser known first person shooters you can recommend?
Singularity.
Yeah, Singularity is very good. We did that for the show. That was very fun. I also want to throw out my perennial recommendation for this, which is Project Snowblind. Began as Deus Ex 3, changed the story. There's very little in terms of kind of twist to the story or anything. You're just a cool merc, but it is a real fun like shooter with powers. Game.
Yeah, I'd say those. Singularity caught me off guard. It's hard to get a hold of legally for not $30, which is weird. It just never goes on sale. But keep an eye out. Wishlist it.
Yeah, it's fun.
Jonathan writes, and this is related to the last dispatch. Do you have any stories of losing save games? Mashing to save into memory card 1, slot 1 made me overwrite Chrono Cross and Final Fantasy X with my friends' save files. Oof.
I don't particularly. Just because I did not end up sharing memory cards very often.
Oh, yeah.
Like memory cards did not travel because I didn't play a lot of co-op games. Every once in a while, like I would go over to Derek's or whatever and bring my save or vice versa, but it's pretty rare. So I generally have that stuff on lock, which I know is like a non-answer, but is my truth.
Yeah. Outside of the Super Nintendo battery backup save, like, oh, you looked at the system wrong, so it decided to short and get rid of all of your Legend of Zelda saves. Outside of those, the only thing I have related to this is Chris, again, my brother. When I was little, he knew that the easiest way to make me cry and extremely distressed if he needed my attention was to threaten to delete my save games. I would just be sitting there playing Pokemon, and he would grab the Game Boy out of my hand and say, I'm going to pull this cartridge out and it's going to get rid of your saves. And I don't even know what he wanted.
Yeah, what when you say he would need your attention, he couldn't just say, hey, Cole? Had that failed? Had he tried every other option?
You know, I only remember him intentionally trying to traumatize me. So forgive me if I don't know the entire chain of events.
Well, joke's on him then, because he didn't get what he wanted. Like, if you only remember the trauma and not his point, the medium was the message. You know, he's failed to stick anything in your memory other than being traumatized.
Yeah.
So bummer.
Mm-hmm. But it was a good bit of leverage.
Yeah, it worked, and I'm sure it would work now if anyone's listening. Tom says, which Dishonored power would be most useful in day-to-day life? Comedy answer is double jump, so I can clear 6 inches. I'd love to be able to jump 6 inches someday. Yeah. And I think two regular Gary jumps would do it. You know,
cool.
Yeah, I mean, blink. I'd blink.
I would blink. I've wanted blink ever since I learned about the X-Men Nightcrawler.
Yep. It's just incredibly cool and very useful. Mm-hmm. Time stop and, turning invisible, obviously very useful for robberies and doing things, but so would blink, and blink would also be more fun.
Yes.
It's not like I couldn't assassinate despots with blink. Time stop would make it easier, but blink would also allow to do it. And then I could do a quick escape and it'd be awesome.
Yeah. It's hard to look at any of them and not think of crimes opportunities that they would present.
Crimes are number one for useful.
Yeah.
Like when I hear use, I hear crime.
Yeah. And there's so many of them that are about summoning rats. Like, it'd be cool to have a little rat army, but like, to what end? Eating
their enemies.
Okay.
From the bone, alive.
Okay. Yeah.
These rats don't fuck around. These aren't, fancy rats.
Blink would just be the most fun, I think.
I think Blink would be really fun. What if you could get an upgrade to your power of summoning rats in Dishonored, where instead of summoning a swarm of rats, you summoned one ornery capybara? Like, all of that rodent mass just went into one greater capybara.
I can't imagine an ornery capybara.
I know. They're so good.
Yeah.
Did you know that I'm going to take a little shine off the apple because it's one of my favorite animals, but they have to eat their own shit.
Mm-hmm.
I think
second harvest. Sad.
Yeah, they do. They have to do a second harvest, and that it's like, man, I would like to get a kiss from a capybara, but not now.
Well, I wasn't looking for kisses. I was more looking for scratching them on the head, maybe.
Yeah. Well, that's obvious. I do that to every animal.
Right.
I just want to get all up in there because they're real sweet little lumps. But now that I know that they're shit lumps, I'm less interested.
Huh.
Sad.
They're auto-ruminants.
Yeah.
That's not actually the word for it. I just made it up. But
it's a nasty thing that nature likes to do.
Old Man Varney writes, you guys have mentioned that you have college degrees. I was wondering what you studied and how you liked or didn't like it. Do you find your degrees help you in life?
I have a degree in arts and letters from Portland State University. I regret doing it, and it is useless to me. My understanding is my college experience was not usual, but it was pretty crappy. And I did not get tons out of it. I wouldn't say none. And it was useful to get financial aid and quit a job I hated to do it. But that was the most useful thing for me. It was not particularly useful. I am very skeptical about higher education in non-STEM fields. That's not because I don't like non-STEM fields. I think they are better. But in terms of the presentation of you give money, we provide job, which is what college is based on, falls apart for passions a lot of the time.
Yes.
They have value in the inherent value of education, but that's not how they're sold.
Right.
So the whole thing I think is hinky, and I'm not a big fan.
I don't know that I would, if I had a younger, depending on what is, my ward would want me to,
Coleman and Robin.
Yeah. Depending on what my ward wanted to do, I don't know that I would say, hey, college is your first choice for that. And, so I graduated with a degree in electronic media. I am and always have been working, quote, in my field. That said, it took me a long time to get like an actual job with it. And I tossed that job as soon as I could to do this full time. So like that ended up working. But like, I don't know. My classes were neat.
Interview for this though. Right. It's like, I'm not saying that you don't use your education in it, but it wasn't a prerequisite to you getting this job.
Oh no. I mean, it was a like the way that one led to the other was that I learned production stuff, but there's very little I think that I learned from actual professors. As good as my professors were, it's a really small program, and everybody kind of knows each other. Class size was like 10 people per per lab class kind of deal. Like all of that was good, but like I don't know, I could probably get to about where I am using tutorials that are available, at least from like a technical standpoint. All of the useful stuff was like production process and like learning how to organize like a larger project. But like the actual college experience of going and living on my own and managing my own time, meeting new people and working on my own shit in the voluminous spare time that I had, that was all the cool stuff, not necessarily like the credential that came, right?
Yeah. Nostalgia for a period of your life called early 20s as opposed to the actual experience. And I had an early 20s without going to college. Like you can also have that tons of free time. Like I rented a room in a house once where my rent was like $115. Like I worked part-time and made more money than I knew what to do with in my early 20s. Like that kind of having that shiftlessness is something that people associate with college, but is not only available. Yeah. Final question. Ryan says, this one's for Cole. Do you think you like the Dark Tower so much because it's basically a JRPG? You recruit a party, there's different worlds, an evil train, mixes worlds up, never ends, has tons of sequels, gets bad, mixes in random pop culture stuff, snitches and sabers to be cute, etc.
I've not drawn that comparison. I think that is probably just Hero's Journey stuff there. I don't know. I would not link link those two outside of just saying that like Dark Tower is, genre, not pastiche, but it's like a genre collage kind of deal. And so much JRPG, does tend to be genre collage as well. I like it for the world and the characters and the metatextual stuff.
Not the structure. It's the content of the box, not the shape and order of the boxes.
Yes. Yeah. So I would say that is not conscious. I would not cite that as conscious, but it's probably some knocking around somewhere in there. Yeah.
What is our topic for this month, Cole?
Our topic, Gary, this is from Mania DH, I believe. I do not know how to pronounce that other than to just say Mania DH, who says, "Hey guys, a recent patron who's been listening for free for the past year or so. I know you've been asked about your travel preferences and experiences before, but I wondered your input on non-fictional settings. Being from Northern Ireland, I'm fortunate enough to have English as a first language, but at the same time, I'm from a niche and boring enough locale to never see it portrayed much, especially so in video games. Despite world popularity as a nation, I recommend checking the video games set in Ireland Wikipedia page for a very, very disappointing read. The Assassin's Creed World Tour graced us with Valhalla DLC. That was pretty cool, but it had to be in the form of Ubi paste. I've never seen the term Ubi paste before. That's good.
That's good.
The coordinates of my village, and this was quite literally a mud puddle. So they got that right. Whoa, that
burn.
My main questions are: what settings, historical or contemporary, have you not yet and would love to see for a video game? What do you never want to see again? Has there ever been a real or heavily inspired by the real setting that got you interested in the real life area itself? Thanks for reading. And if you did, thanks for reading if you did, and looking forward to more of the show.
Yeah. So taking this as an opportunity to kind of broadly talk about game settings, And ones that are standard, like why we keep having games that take place in the same settings.
Yeah.
Kind of over and over. And then what we would obviously like to see.
Yeah.
Because there is a real dearth of variety of these, specifically in how they're used, I guess. Like you can run into something that is technically set somewhere, but doesn't effectively use the place.
Yeah. It's a bad representation. Yeah.
Bad representation, or just a shallow representation. Like the place is very incidental to the location. Like I think for a location to really matter in the spirit of this question, it has to interface with the story or characters in a way that is like important.
Yes.
It can't just be a backdrop.
No.
New Orleans Hill Zone. Like
has to New Orleans Hills. That's pretty good.
Like,
I think about that kind of consonance, let's say, like that being done well. It's a game that I've only like messed around with, but it's something that I understand is actually pretty good. Watch Dogs 2 being a game that takes place in and is a skewering of startup tech culture kind of stuff, being set in the Bay Area, and just turning it into kind of this hellhole that is shaped by all the .com bullshit going on, and all the IoT dystopian, almost cyberpunk kind of stuff. Like that is a really good resonance between those things. That seems like a good mix of them, more so than just, hey, this is our game that happens to be set in the Bay Area because that happens to be where people live.
Yeah, and because it's just a major city where things happen.
Yeah.
Things get set there. That's a really good example, I think, of doing a good job with it. You can do a good job with it through taking an area that is not often represented and taking something about it and forefronting it. You can also do a cool job with it by taking something that is very represented and taking it more seriously.
Yes.
Like, for example, the depiction of New York in the Spider-Man game is really good, I think.
Yeah.
Uses New York well, represents it. It feels New Yorky. It looks like New York to somebody who has been to New York. Like probably residents could find their exact address and find a mud puddle, there, or the equivalent. But for somebody who has visited New York a few times, it's a really nice approximation of it.
Yeah.
In a video game that I think is just very successful at establishing that density.
Yeah. David, co-host on The Level, he lived in Manhattan for a while, and he liked playing The Division 2, which had basically his neighborhood as a level, and he was able to go and find his apartment down by Battery Park, which that's a cool experience.
Yeah, that's a really fun, surreal thing that you can, some people are able to do, like able to get depending on where they live, which I think is cool.
I've never lived anywhere important enough to have it happen, but I've gotten real high on edibles and played around with VR maps. So
yeah. We all have Google Maps for this. In terms of like settings that, so what we get a lot of American city. We get a lot of American rural. So whatever Alan Wake takes place in, we're always going to get stuff like that.
we get a lot of Twin Peaks.
Twin Peaks, Gone Home, like a rural Northwestern, kind of thing. We get a lot of that. We get a lot of medieval Europe, and we get a lot of like Japan, feudal era Japan. I feel like are the big video game settings.
Big city Japan as well.
Yeah, big city Japan. Yeah. And then ill-defined future. Like just kind of cyberpunkish, which barely counts because it tends not to be about the place. Right?
No.
One of my favorite properties of all time is Shadowrun, which takes place in Seattle and doesn't have anything to do with Seattle. Like when you play those video games, it does not feel like Seattle. And when you play the tabletop game, it barely feels like Seattle. Like unless you know the town, you can't really add enough detail to make it feel distinct.
Yeah.
That is a bummer. To me, but any like those places that you go to over and over and over, there are ones that I love. Like it's not a death knell to be in an ill-defined future or an American city or an American Twin Peaks. There are lots of games that do those things that I like, but I am So I guess this is a really, really long path I'm taking to are there any settings you never want to see again?
Yeah.
No, because there's still, it's only so important to me.
Yeah.
Like burned out on feudal Japan for now, but I'm sure that will fade. And a cool enough take with like cool monsters and fucked up demons would probably get me back in.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to like axe anything, because I think that rather than just the kind of setting being a turnoff, I think it's like either lazy or just very cursory depictions,
Yeah.
Like, just what do you have to say about this? Why, what is the choice to set it here say about the rest of the stuff going on? Like, I think that, for cyberpunk kind of stuff, Shadowrun, that's less about like the base place and more about the way that these various forces have shaped something that was already there, Like it's almost always about, market forces or technology coming in and, just seeing the stress of the disparity between, where the world wants to head versus just the actual built environment that it is stubbornly still there, and the people who cannot be brought along to prosper alongside it. Like, that's cool stuff. And if I said no more cyberpunk future, please, you lose the ability to tell more stories in that, right?
Yeah, but I 100%. There's also, though, a lot of times where that stuff is not specific. Like, it's not about the specific tensions of the future of this place and the present of this place. It's about the current general presence and the current general future. Yeah. Like cyberpunk games dodge the question in a lot of ways because they tend to be anonymous. Yeah. Like there will be an aesthetic, you can see a billboard with some Japanese text in it in Blade Runner. But it doesn't, like, Blade Runner takes place in LA, I'm pretty sure, but it doesn't need to. It doesn't feel like it says very much about LA to me, or what happened to it, other than just like this idea of in the 80s, cyberpunk thought Japan was going to take everything over.
Yeah, because everybody thought that in the 80s. Yeah.
Well, and because William Gibson very specifically thought it when he made cyberpunk. So yeah, I don't want to get rid of anything. And the thing I would probably be most likely to get rid of, I can't, because it's my kryptonite, which is castles and shit. Yeah. Like I just, a non-FromSoft take on castles and shit, typically does not have a lot that's adding to it, like ye old knights and the like. But I just am jazzed by swords. And I like exploring a castle. I think they're a really cool place for a video game level to be. I just can't get rid of the part of me that's just inherently interested in that. Yeah. So like, while I think that typically like games don't have tons to say about that era, or the games that take place in that era aren't saying very much about it, are not using it more than just a genre backdrop. It's a genre backdrop I like.
Yeah, like castles and stuff, it's less of a setting and more of like a bracket for expectations you could have about what you're going to see in this work.
Yes.
Yeah. I think about stuff that I would like to see more, even just based on things that were done before, like before we move off of the cyberpunk kind of stuff. Dragonfall being set in, the Kreuzberg in Berlin, as like this hypothetical anarchist collective plopped right down in the middle of all of these different forces from the different directions around it. This kind of little pockets of civilization that can only exist temporarily, but while it does, it's beautiful. That's all real cool. And that's great. You don't see anything really, set in Berlin, in Central European. I have a huge affection for anything Eastern European in games.
Me too.
Whether it's, the Belarusian cities in Half-Life 2, whether it's, Pathologic, the small towns on the steppe, things like that. Stalker. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too. We talked about that. That was, when we did Pathologic, where it's like, this is a different aesthetic. It feels like a game from a different place in the world with a different mindset than we're used to. And that was very, very refreshing. And one of the reasons I think so is because it avoided some pitfalls that happened with this, which like I'm tempted to say in answer to this, like, I just want any area we haven't seen. But I don't want that, because video games fall prey to kind of shitty exoticism a lot.
Yep.
What I don't want to say is like, oh, I want more games set in Africa, and then trust video game developers to set video games in Africa.
What I want is like a very specific example, which is like, I want a game made by an Ethiopian team that is about that region, specifically as a place that has never been colonized. Right.
Yeah.
Like an actual informed, insider's view about the kinds of stories that they value in that particular setting that I don't know very much about. Like, it needs to be so specific, as opposed to just me saying, hey, let's have it happen in Africa land. Take it away, Resident Evil 5.
Yeah, exactly. And I would add a rider to this motion, which is I don't want a 101 primer on, what the local equivalents are of like, like what I don't want, as much as I like and admire this game, I'm not just clamoring for more year walks.
Right.
I would like there to be something that deals with more specificity and less myth as well.
Yeah.
These kind of things. Like, it's weird that we don't have anything that emulates day-to-day life outside of America or Japan.
Yes.
Like we can play a game, you can play a Shenmue and see what it might be like to live in a small town in Japan, and you can play a host of video games and see what it might be like to play, in an American or just like European, like general European town. Yeah. But I don't know, like, I would love to play a video game where, like a Life is Strange that takes place, in Cairo or Istanbul or something. It's not exoticized. It's not just about the monsters and myths and stuff. It's gives me an idea of what these cultures are like.
Yeah. Yeah. No, give me a Life is Strange in like Johannesburg, right?
Yes.
That'd be cool.
That'd be awesome. Yeah. Something I really want to get on the schedule is Mankind Divided, because it takes place in future Prague.
Oh, nice.
And that's really cool. Like it's a great, they do a great job with it. It's not so proggy, it's not so King Crimson that it answers our specific requests, but it does, it is an unusual setting and it does stuff with it.
Yeah. The secret on some of this, like for like setting question, is give me something like Hitman where it like you feasibly could be going anywhere, and yes, oftentimes you're going to be just killing people around where rich people like to be, but like I don't know, that Colorado episode in Hitman 1, like breaking into a prepper commune, pretty cool.
I'm mad at myself for not thinking about Hitman in this, because Hitman is such a good answer for so much of the stuff.
Oh yeah.
Like, yes, you're doing murders, but like you are a fly on the wall in snapshot locations all around the world.
Yeah. I mean,
what a beautiful thing.
The Chongqing mission in Hitman 3, where like it is quite literally you're walking along the streets, where unhoused people are being swept up, and then going into these, really ritzy facilities, seeing those existing like right next to each other. I'm sorry to make this all about like class disparity or whatever, but that just tells you
obviously it matters. It's a big part. There is a lot of the reason why probably you could argue one reason there's not a booming Ethiopian video game industry is because of economics.
Yeah.
That's no, probably about it. I was trying to couch that so I didn't accidentally say something offensive. Yeah. But yeah, it's just not that country's industry level. That's, it's not, doesn't say anything about the people. It's just the case. So there are economic aspects to this, and threading that needle between it not being like poverty porn, or being an outsider doing this, coming in and just kind of showing like, oh, the Kowloon Wall City, isn't it scary and gross and dangerous? Something that is actually about feet on the ground is really important and refreshing.
Yeah.
That specificity is huge. Like the cool thing about Hitman is that like, it doesn't say what is life like in Miami. It says what is life like in this microculture in Miami.
Yeah.
That springs up around an event.
Yeah, that pops up in the space that is for events. Yeah.
I don't know how we keep so many questions just lead back to Hitman being too fucking good for this world.
Oh, it's amazing.
So many levels. Yeah. It is really a remarkable video game that a lot of dipshits dismiss just because they don't like the name and the concept. Like even if you like mod it so you don't have to kill people or just don't kill people. Like if you like video games and level design and location, play Hitman and don't murder anybody. Just check out these spaces because they did stuff with a budget and level of scale that just does not happen in places where it does not happen.
It's miraculous. It really, really is.
It's very special. Like, so more of those. Please. I'm less interested in whatever James Bond is going to do in those locations. I'd rather hitman somebody than seduce somebody in a gross James Bond way. But I hope that team is going to continue this, like, we're going to look at parts of the world that don't get video gameized.
Yes.
Kind of mindset.
Yeah. Love it.
Do you know about the northernmost city? That's like up in the name of it is escaping me right now. I've talked about it in the Slack before.
Northernmost city. No.
In the world. This says it's Longyearbyen, which was not what I thought it was. There's a city that, the name is escaping me right now, which makes me sound like an idiot. But it is this city like way up in the Arctic where like basically everyone is welcome. Like if you want to go there and settle, you can. And it's real dangerous. There are polar bears and shit. But there's this little industry and Svalbard.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So that's the archipelago. The city is Longyearbyen. Okay. Svalbard, though, is really interesting to me. That is worth watching YouTubes about and reading about. That would be a really cool place for a horror game, I think, because they could not be more cut off and polar bears are scary.
Agreed.
Give me a Longyearbyen city or a game.
So I'm a huge dork about like geography kind of stuff. Like, don't give me a quiz, but like on my bedroom wall, I've got a map taped to a corkboard, and occasionally I've gone in and looked for exotic locations, quote unquote, non-American locations where listeners have patronized from or bought stuff. And I've put pins up there, but like sometimes I'll just stand there and look at it and say like, oh, that's an island that's in a weird place. Let me just Google that and see what happens there. And oftentimes it's just like, oh yeah, it's an abandoned Soviet base. I'm like, that's still really cool though.
Yeah. Shit. Singularity.
Yeah.
Or like Snake Island or whatever. Yeah. Where that I found out about the 72 most dangerous animals. That incredibly dangerous snake, and you're not supposed to go there because all the snake signs. Family that lived there and died in a lighthouse. trying to live against the snakes.
There's a series of books that are just kind of like middlebrow reference books, but I love these things. I just keep them out variously to read them. But it's like the Atlas of
Obscura?
Like the Atlas of no, it's like the Atlas of remote islands, the Atlas of cursed places, the Atlas of abandoned cities or something like that, which is just just reference books. They're broken down by region, and you can just read these little stories about what happens there or what you could find there. I would really recommend those if you're just looking for like a way to split the deck and possibly get a cool thing, if not a setting directly to use, something that could inform a setting. Love those things.
Yeah, that stuff is great. Yeah. So generally we want new stuff, but just handled in the exact way we want it.
Yeah,
is the answer.
That's not so hard.
Yeah, just do it. Why not? Yeah. So that is it for your questions and topics for this. Keep an eye out on the Patreon for next month. Now we are going to read your responses to our games for August: Final Fantasy 12 and Wario Land 4.
Yeah. I'll get us started with Fiona, who says, Final Fantasy XII is the last JRPG that I 100%ed back in high school. I specifically remember finishing the last of the super bosses, finally rolling credits, and then saying out loud to an empty room, I don't think that was worth it. I've had some close relapses, but mostly maintained a better value on my time since.
Super bosses are a tough, tough road to hoe.
And there are a lot of super bosses in Final Fantasy 12.
There's probably, I did not fight them this go around, but there's probably a level in which they're fun and you can still kind of do some expressive play. And then ones that have solved meta and extremely optimized strats. Like you have to go grind for enough ribbons or this boss is impossible.
Yeah.
Kind of stuff.
It's probably like a 60-40 split between those, Yeah.
So I could see being burned out on all of them or doing all of them.
Yeah.
Kevin says, Loved your episodes covering Final Fantasy XII. I played the game when it came out for the PS2 and really enjoyed it. To this day, it's probably the most time I've spent playing a game. If I remember right, I clocked in around 120 hours. I don't remember much of the text of the game, but I do recall enjoying the dialogue immensely. Something that has also stuck with me over the years is the randomly impressive sub-area names on the larger area maps. I don't recall any in particular, but looking them up now, I see this map of the Nebraeus Deadlands having sub-areas called the Vale of Lingering Sorrow and Echoes of the Past. It is just lovely.
Yeah, I love those little area names.
Yeah. It's good proto Dark Souls shit.
that shit happens in real life too. Like you'll just be looking at a map and you'll see an area that is like
Dawn of Sorrows.
Just what?
You're like, Dawn of Sorrows.
Well, usually it's like just some dude's name, but it's like, oh, that is Daniel's folly. Okay, who's Daniel? Why was that their folly?
I love a folly.
Folly is so good.
I live not too far away from a neighborhood in Portland called Sullivan's Gulch, which I've always been a little tickled by.
Yeah,
Gulch. I mean, it's just a neighborhood. There's no gulch about it, but it's a cool suffix.
Yeah, but yes, I'm a big fan of those little area names as well. Jonathan writes, I love the older Final Fantasies. Final Fantasy XII felt so different that it made me question, am I stuck in serious nostalgia, or is the series heading in a direction that is not for me? I think it sits somewhere in the middle. Ivalice feels amazing as a lived-in world, and it's fun to explore beyond what you could in Final Fantasy Tactics. Like Final Fantasy VIII, the side content really shines. Hunting rare monsters, fighting Gilgamesh, and obtaining a new pantheon of espers were standouts. The elimination of random encounters is amazing, but I still prefer the older combat. Gambits weren't bad, but they didn't feel engaging. I imagine you could frantically input every action if you wanted to, like a madman. The plot and music were fine, but ultimately forgettable. Overall, Final Fantasy XII may have been a premonition of me falling away from the series, but I still enjoyed my time. Vaughn still sucks, though.
It is, Vaughn does suck. It is a bridge point between old Final Fantasy and new Final Fantasy. Definitely. 100%.
Yeah.
So it being the Final Fantasy that I fell off with, I never beat it as a kid. I just got pretty far in it and quit. I had a similar experience. I'm ultimately glad I went back, because things like the gambits are now an upside to me rather than a downside to me. But I imagine you're not alone in that. I imagine that there is a pretty strong contingent of Final Fantasy people who did not follow it. If they followed it past 12, put the hard brakes at 13 and never went back.
Yeah, I think that span of time between 10, basically between 10 and now, it just the extended Square Enix identity crisis that we talked about in the episodes. Yeah, I think that provided ample opportunity for people to fall off. But, I am very sympathetic to the question of okay, did I move to the city or did the city move to me? Right.
Yeah.
Did I grow out of Final Fantasy or did it just grow in a different direction?
It's honestly a question I've been struggling with myself ever since we started this show.
Yeah.
So many of my dumb, shitty little boring rants just boil down to that. It's me thinking out loud about that exact question. How could this be something that I would literally run home to play that now feels like the most boring fucking shit I've ever
I would skip school for 2 days when these came out.
Yeah. And now it's a little bit of a chore. Even Final Fantasy 12, which I liked, was still pretty easy to put down for me. When I was done, I was like, yeah, I'm done. This is fine. And figuring out where the articulation point is very interesting to me, at least.
Yeah.
A different Jonathan, I believe. Says,
yes, it is.
On Final Fantasy XII, on that episode, Gary mentioned that the different accents were something the Western localization team added for flavor, and that ended with 12. I can say that statement is only mostly true. There's one other Final Fantasy game that uses accents and dialects, and that's 14. You can tell where some characters are from because they use sailor slang or have Hindi accents. Even what some people call the summons in the game world tells you where they come from, either a primal, an icon, or a god. Those little details are all over 14, and it baffles me that not just Final Fantasy, but other games don't really use that simple trick to make the world seem bigger and more natural. That's my gift to you, so you don't have to pay the time tax that I did playing Final Fantasy 14 and to cut off any pedants who come at you. Cheers.
Thank you for your service, Jonathan.
Yeah, I will prescribe to Pedant Shield Pills Plus whenever I can. I think on some level I knew that because people talk about Final Fantasy 14 a lot on the Slack.
Yes.
I still think of them as very separate games because it's a big infinite hour MMO.
Yeah.
You know, I categorize them differently, whether that's fair or not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, but it's good to know that they use that trick because it's a good trick.
It's a great trick. You know, and as somebody who is like, I don't like character action games really anymore, but is almost mildly like curious about Final Fantasy 16.
Mm-hmm.
Like I like that it's going medieval again.
Yeah.
You know, and it's being run by the Final Fantasy 14 guy that everyone assures me is great. Mm-hmm. Even if you have to wait 90 hours to get there, it is encouraging that this might be part of that as well. Cause it's a cool trick.
Yeah.
Necessary, but not sufficient though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's enough to keep me cautiously curious, let's say.
Yeah, but not day one purchase curious.
Yeah.
Wait for people to start saying what the game is like, not just Final Fantasy 15 is amazing, full stop. No, I will not be answering questions.
Yeah.
Bullshit.
I need to get it after the initial sugar rush and after the initial backlash. It needs to moderate just a little bit. Like both of those waves need to pass for me to get an honest read on what actually is happening with it.
Yeah, the sober appraisal period, which takes a long time for a Final Fantasy.
Yes. Will writes, I first played Final Fantasy XII as a senior in high school, curled up with the flu on our uncomfortable living room chair. 10 years later, I played Zodiac Age while in graduate school, standing in front of the TV at 4 a.m. with my 6-month-old hanging off my front in a baby carrier. He had trouble sleeping through the night, and the only way he'd go back to sleep is if I rocked him gently while standing. Oh, that's sweet. I remember playing the game while reflecting on the difference between those two eras of my life. The story felt different with my son held close than it did as a teenager who didn't really understand love and sacrifice. While not perfect, it felt like the game executed better on exploring Ash's struggle with grief. It gave her power and focus, but was just as often self-destructive. It made me wonder what kind of person I would be if I went through the kind of loss that she did.
Yeah, I think that that is the intent.
Yes.
And something that, like, again, just me doing the thing I was just making fun of myself for, my never ending like self-exploration of this. And this is not a qualitative difference. I don't think this is a virtue, but I can't do that bringing of myself. I can't be like, I wonder what I would feel like if I went through the same thing Ash went through without knowing more about Ash.
Yeah.
Like I really don't like that storyline in Final Fantasy 12, even if I don't want to take that away from Will at all. Mm-hmm. But it fell flat for me because her weird little real doll husband, who like only shows up as a Force ghost, doesn't mean anything to me.
Right. Like
he's just good but honorable, and their relationship has no detail. It's not lived in. Mm-hmm. There's nothing for me. I don't know why they love each other.
Yeah.
You know, and that's super important to me. I can't slot in, like, there are people who I greatly, greatly, greatly love. And I have lost and have had a huge impact on me. I can't watch media and slot those people in that easily, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just I'm very glad that Will has that, but that is part of the gene of enjoying these stories that other people I find have that I lack.
Yeah.
A lot of the time.
Yeah. And for me, like, it's hard to respond to it because I do not necessarily primarily appreciate Final Fantasy 12 story on the personal scale. I think that it works better at a bigger scale than personal, you know? So yeah, it's hard to respond to that because I don't have a lot of personal feelings in that direction. Yeah.
I would like the version of the game that did spend more time on Ash's loss.
Yes.
And what that did to her.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that would be cool to me.
Agreed.
Rose says, Final Fantasy 12 is the game that I've started the most times without ever finishing. I think I've started it up and lost steam 5 times since first playing in 2008, both the regular and the Zodiac Age versions. While I really like the quick nature of the Gambit system, something about the combat loses me at 30 plus hours. Once I fall into a safe rut with all-purpose gambits that let me walk from one end of an area to the other without needing to make a choice, I just lose interest. It's weird because I do think many other aspects of the game work well together, but once the moment-to-moment gameplay loses me, there's no drive to wrap up the plot. I don't think I've ever made it past the Great Crystal. It's interesting contrast to Final Fantasy 13, which came next, which I think is significantly worse as a game, but much more engaging moment to moment in combat. Final Fantasy 13's combat was fun enough to motivate me to power through to the end, even though all other aspects except maybe the characters were weaker than Final Fantasy 12. The story, the setting, the pacing, leveling problems. It makes me think about how a good game can still outstay its welcome and a bad game can live past its welcome if it has a hook.
Yeah, I like that last part quite a bit. That is an interesting decision to make. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I often, I've been using it as an example a lot recently, but Control pulling me along with the story well after the play had lost me.
Yeah.
Horizon Zero Dawn, same thing. Like video games do that a lot.
Yeah.
And vice versa. Like I hate playing this. I don't care enough about the story to finish it because it is just poison to me.
Yeah.
In my hands.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like any of that combat in the Final Fantasy 13 vein, 13, 15, and 7 remake, which I kind of lump all together in that, combination real time, button input, like you're making more decisions based on like stun meter and stuff. All of that is really interesting and fun. It's just that either 13 or 15 held my attention, whereas like Final Fantasy, the 7 remake, I'm curious about it, but never had the time to put into it to see further. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting the way something that sometimes feels true to me about Final Fantasy fandom is that people feel a little bit like they're under like a goblin's curse to like it. Like even people who really like it are always just like, yeah, this thing about it absolutely fucking sucks balls. This is the worst. Even the hugest fans like, oh, you have to get through 90 hours for it to get good. This sucks. This sucks. And it's just weighting those individual aspects of it, and I yearn for a world where you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
Like where I don't have to say like, yeah, this part was absolutely unquestionably garbage, but it was still worth it to go do this good thing. Like what if you just did the good thing? What if you found a video game where you didn't have to do that?
Yeah.
And I understand like not everybody, people evaluate their own time different ways. And sometimes that thing that they can get that's good is unique enough to them that they'll put up with any amount of bad. Like I understand that. Yeah. There are things that I'm that way about too, but it's just always interesting to me that fans of this series are always like, yeah, this thing about this absolutely fucking sucks. It's the worst. However, I really love the music, so it was worth playing.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Go with God.
Goblin's curse is a very funny phrase.
I don't know what happened to add to the apologetics for the series among its fans.
Let's see. Jay writes, I don't think it's an accident that you use a chessboard to level up in a game about grand political strategy and intrigue, especially since you're encouraged to plan out your progression path in advance. Likewise, I think it's fascinating that a game about the gods manipulating the major political powers of the world has a combat system that favors fuzzy heuristic direction over explicit control of the player's actions. I think it's weird that the lost princess of an occupied kingdom is running around doing contract monster killing while the world is at stake, but I do think the game's systems and themes are more aligned than they appear at first glance. I don't know if the parallel between the Acuria and the player is an intentional meta-narrative commentary about games in general, but it's definitely an interesting coincidence. The player has some agency in directing the characters, but they very firmly make their own decisions through the course of the game. It's fun to play the game with that dynamic in mind.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting idea. I think that the reason why I didn't catch on to this when I was playing is that I feel like a lot of that can be said about a lot of these games, that are about the manipulations of the gods. And if I'm going to make a drawing of being manipulated by a god to being a player, there's just a lot of video games that applies to. Like you can accidentally fall into that pretty easy.
I mean, even back as far as, Final Fantasy Legend, the saga game on the, like literally the thing you fight at the end is called the Creator. And it just looks like a dude, Yeah.
Yeah. Like that is a pretty common thematic trick.
Yeah.
I think, in the genre, I could see the chessboard, thing for sure. The other bit, you do control your characters, like you can set them up to do this, but the reason why that doesn't land very hard for me as a theme thing is what we mentioned, and the fact that you're basically just setting them up to do the things you would do anyway.
Yeah.
It's got some like Legend of Legaia feeling to it, where like that feels like it's much more interactive, but really you're just putting in a cheat code instead of choosing from a menu.
Yeah.
The illusion of additional interactivity. I guess.
Yeah. The one thing that I will kind of make an extra comment on, the idea that, this princess of an occupied kingdom is doing monster killing contracts. This is like a rare instance where I do not feel the dissonance of impending calamity and fucking around and wasting time, specifically because like everything is held at such a stasis. It is the two empires for the majority of the story, threatening with war at each other and jockeying for position, and struggling internally before any action takes place. And that is happening alongside individual actors attempting to do maybe like one or two small things and you going and trying to outmaneuver them. But there is the meteor is hanging in the sky up until the very end when Sky Fortress Bahamut is headed toward Rabanastre. They avoid that dissonance pretty well in 12, I think.
What's interesting is I didn't do tons of side stuff. Like I didn't feel dissonance at all. Like my characters were constantly saying, we have to get here. And I was like, yeah, we have to get here. And then I went there and it felt pretty natural. Like the characters did not feel like they were fucking around at all. I don't know how it would feel if I took a real lackadaisical pace to it for me personally. But it was interesting. I almost never do that in role-playing games at all, Eastern or Western. Right. I love doing side stuff generally. So typically I will go, save somebody else's kidnapped kid before I find Sean in a video game. And here I just chose not to. Is this me or you?
This is you.
This is me. Ian says, this was a game that broke my first bought console. Well, really, I broke my PS2 trying to mod it. My first modification was so it could read a burned ISO of the International Zodiac Job System version. When that didn't work, I bought a copy of the game from Japan and had it shipped to me and then tried modding it for region unlocking. It was the greatest amount of illegal things I'd ever done to play a game. Sadly, all my efforts only led to my PS2 insisting on a formatting disk. Dejected, I tried to revert my changes, but ended up hearing a sharp, small snap. Oof. After that, my PS2 became a lovely paperweight. I since emulated the game on PC and was ecstatic when they announced the Zodiac Age, 2 job classes per character, and rapturous when they ported it to Switch. Really looking forward to hearing y'all's discussion of my favorite Final Fantasy.
I love that story.
Hardware modding.
Yeah. Hey,
so whole thing.
Don't feel bad. I fucked up doing that myself too. It wasn't modding, but when my PlayStation 2 laser broke, I attempted to. I bought an OEM replacement, looked up guides on how to solder it, and still fucked it up. And just went on a site and bought somebody's pre-modded PS2.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's good to be able to pay people to do that for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I'm dog shit at it. I'm not. It's the big running guppy thing is bricking your Switch and stuff, and now I can brick my Steam Deck as a thing if I add too many mods or do some shit. I have a much more expensive little thing to brick.
Oh man.
What does Nat say?
Nat says, this is the Nat who sponsored the episode.
Thank you, Nat.
Thank you, Nat. They say, Final Fantasy XII is a deeply flawed game I nonetheless have a lot of affection for. A large part is, of course, nostalgia. This is one of the first big console games that I sank my teeth into, and multiple failed runs carried me through junior high and then high school, when one of my close friends got into it with me. I can still remember pulling an all-nighter fighting the atrocity of design that is Yasmat. Another part is that it is, in many ways, Final Fantasy's last gasp at being something besides a character action franchise. This game's bizarre combination of MMO and CRPG-esque mechanics makes it a standout to me, even if it doesn't always work. Whatever game lets you give up on a boss you're sure you're lost against, only for your party of simply programmed idiots to somehow win. This is actually how I beat Elder Worm the first time. I think the Zodiac Age re-release was just what the game needed, sanding off many of the rougher edges and making the game more accessible, while also making the license board a lot more dynamic and interesting. And I was thrilled to be able to play it on a handheld. The treasure system remains the most indefensible part of the game, though. Absolute rubbish. Overall, a standout to me, even if it isn't perfect. I think Final Fantasy XII demands more discussion and conversation than the casual dismissal it gets from many franchise fans. And I can't wait to hear what you have to say about it.
Yeah, thank you again, Nat.
Yeah, thank you.
Watching the episode, it was fun. Like I was really happy to have an excuse to go through this and talk about it.
Same.
It's interesting in hearing people talk about it was kind of my first exposure to it being a black sheep of the series.
Yeah.
When it came out, there was a lot of discussion around that, but I felt like we were firmly in like a deep reappraisal, largely probably influenced by me feeling like Jeremy Parish is a tastemaker.
Yeah.
Like my perspective of Jeremy Parish, like thought leader, probably influenced that.
It's not, not a bad position to bet on, I would say.
Yeah. Jeremy's smart. Like that guy's great. But yeah, it is an interesting thing reading these responses and seeing that there are people who are just like, yeah, this was my, one toke over the line.
Yeah.
For this stuff.
There are a lot of responses that I was not able to put in just because of episode length generally. And I tried to keep it pretty representative. There were a lot of people who were lukewarm on it. Or who just, straight up, it didn't land for them. So this is pretty divisive even among listeners.
Yeah. Fascinating. Like I really thought that this would be one of the most popular, games we've done. Like whenever we do Final Fantasy, I always feel like people love them. Like not the episodes, but the games themselves. Like people have a very strong response to the games. Yeah. It's interesting to see people be more lukewarm to this than Final Fantasy X, which I think is a worse game.
Yeah.
Vincent, aka Mr. Reciprocity, says, as someone who followed Final Fantasy religiously from 7 to X2, 10-2, but lost track of the series when it entered its troubled teen years, I was thrilled when WoF gave me an excuse to finally come back to it. The thrill, sadly, did not last. The thing that really bombed for me with Final Fantasy XII was the storytelling. So much of it feels artificial, disjointed, arbitrary, and I think it's because this game lacks a solid sense of perspective. Those earlier Final Fantasies have a particular formula. Start with a group of weirdos, ram them headfirst into a convoluted, overblown plot, and then bind it all together with human connection, moments of genuine warmth, shared hardship, etc. The party's relationships with each other, with NPCs, and with the systems and structures of the setting provide the point of view from which we experience the world. 12 instead starts with a group of Calvin Klein models, runs them alongside the convoluted, overblown plot, and binds it together with not very much. The party rarely interacts outside of moving the plot forward and never forms a coherent unit. Compared to the game's closest narrative sibling, 9, in which a blonde vest-wearing street rat joins up with a princess on the run who uses a fake name. Zidane and Garnet/Dagger don't just hang out and do tasks together. They also serve to present to us very different angles on their world, and the game has us watch as they reconcile those viewpoints and the viewpoints of the rest of their crew of misfits to create our understanding of the setting. The sum of this, for me, ends up feeling like an exquisite corpse, with a handful of writers trading control back and forth, but none of them are particularly interested in what the others are doing. One wants to talk about zoomed-out geopolitics, another had a cool story about crystal aliens manipulating the fate of mankind, a third has a whole spreadsheet of judges they're trying to get on screen, and a fourth really wanted to do a thing about sky pirates. These things could be interesting, but without that sense of perspective tying it all together, it's all just there, flat and perfunctory, like a victory screen that just says congratulations in yellow type while the camera pans circles around a trio of heroes who finished their animations 8 seconds ago.
Scathing.
Scathing. It's not like I don't fully agree with that. There is a thing in this, like, that did push me away. We talked about in the episode, like the characters stopped talking to each other. Arguably, at least 1/3 of the characters have no reason to be there. And Balthier and, Fran are iffy for being there. They're there for money, but then they also get in there for other reasons and stick around longer than you'd expect for a Han Solo type character. Like, the characters are more disconnected from things than they are in other games.
Yes.
The thing that was the other hand that drew me in with this was that their dialogue wasn't fucking embarrassing. Because the presentation is really good. So it's a little bit of me being like tricked. I generally agree that these characters don't have a good reason to be here. It's not a great character piece, this game.
But also theme matters, or theming matters, I guess.
Yeah. Theming and presentation does matter, and as somebody who's bugbear with these games a lot of times is the absolutely bottom of the barrel embarrassing dialogue. It's really nice to not have that happen.
Yeah.
In these.
It's very tempting, knowing the production woes that this game had, especially with Matsuno, who was kind of the grand planner for the story and world. Him leaving a year before it came out, and other folks stepping in. It's tempting to fall into an easy pattern of just like auteur, like, oh yeah, he was not there to see it through to the end, so therefore that probably contributed to some of the messiness feeling. The real answer is maybe, possibly, that could have been a factor, but also who knows how involved he would be once production got that far in. Maybe it was broken at the start there. I guess I'm just remarking on the temptation that is there to make it an easy auteur story, I guess.
Yeah. It's which would square with the, like, there's 4 different people with 4 different kind of focuses. Yeah. Matsuno was focused on one, but he didn't have the firm hand on the reins the entire time.
Or, to marry them together, with his priority on the framework, right?
Yeah. Or even if they were ever meant to be married together. Like, what if somebody came along partway through and is like, hey, Sky Pirates are cool.
Yeah.
I don't know. To me, it's okay because, like, I think that the character work in Final Fantasy IX is much better. Like, I think that's a better character game, and I think that's mostly a better game. It just also takes a huge shit in the last disc. Whereas the one thing is, I will say that Final Fantasy 12, if it's going to incorporate its like space fleas out of nowhere, it does a better job of that.
Yeah.
Like, I think the plotting is a little bit better while the character work is not particularly good.
Right.
I would agree with. So, like, I am okay with one entry in the series integrating its gigantic space flea, but leaving its characters on the side, because I am sick of likable characters who all of a sudden have to unite against some anonymous garbage threat, an evil tree. I don't know, some bullshit. I don't know. I'm pretty done with that trope.
Mo.
Yeah. They have to fight Mo at the end, because why not? I'm pretty sick of that, and I'm glad that Final Fantasy 12 avoids it. Here I am doing the same thing I was talking about earlier, though, where you have to be like, this thing about it really sucks, but this other thing is good. Like, it's the series. Like, there's no unqualified wins in it. Like, it's not possible for it.
Agreed. Let's move on. We have one lonely response to Wario Land 4. Andrew writes in, Wario Land 4 is good, but definitely my least favorite of the Wario Lands. Wario Land 1, aka Mario Land 3, was one of the first games I asked for after my dad gave me his OG Game Boy with Tetris and Jeopardy. It had deep explorative gameplay for its time, with lots of secret treasures to find and a whole secret world. Then Wario Land 2 ratcheted that puzzle box platforming way up, with tons of secret exits and alternate story routes to find. Wario Land 3 had fewer levels than 2, but each one got a night and day form, and you had to revisit them in satisfyingly quasi-Metroidvania kind of ways. So it was a disappointment to me as a kid to finally get Wario Land 4 after all those commercials with Wario on the shopping mall intercom, and find a far shorter game without many of the interesting secrets or variation. Want to knock off some of the health from an already easy boss? I mean, not really? That being said, the levels all have brilliant concepts, and the sound room starts to inject the kind of weirdness that WarioWare would fully embrace. It's a beautiful little game, and if I had first played it now as an adult who can buy games whenever they want, instead of as a kid who had to make 4 or so games a year last as long as I could, I'd probably be a lot rosier on it.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
I think sound room was probably an autocorrect from soundtrack. Yes. I was like, did we miss the sound room?
Yeah.
Like, does Wario have like a kick-ass speaker?
I don't know.
Or does he just sell kick-ass speakers?
It seems like he'd be out on that hustle, on that grift.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see that. All the things that would be negative in the context of the series then are huge positives to me now. Yeah. I prefer something shorter and more focused. It's interesting that Andrew doesn't bring up, because the biggest difference to me is that life bar thing, and what that, we talked about that in the episode, no need to go into it again, but like that bit about how many puzzles were just, fuck you got stung by a bee, do it again. In the early ones. I really liked moving away from that personally.
Same.
So, thanks everybody for writing in. We appreciate you.
Yeah. I think it's time to if you have thoughts about September's games, almost if you have thoughts about September's games, which are Bugsnax, Metal Gear Solid 5, and Carrion, you can go to duckfeed.tv/contact and write in by September the 15th. The deadline is always the 15th of any given month. If you have thoughts about multiple games, please separate them into multiple responses. And if you have thoughts about October's games, which are
this is Cole's pick of a month. He's got 2 picks in a row because of my 2 picks in the row at the beginning of the month. Devotion is Cole's pick.
Yep.
Not played it, only heard good things.
It's amazing. Taiwanese first-person horror game. It is one of the most upsetting things I've played in a long time, actually. For a long time, you were unable to get it because of the Chinese government specifically. Yeah, that was censored. You can get a hold of it now. So more people can and should play it. Yeah,
great. I'm looking
Devotion.
forward to it. Yeah, I've heard really good things about it.
Yeah.
Next thing we're doing?
Next thing we're doing is Strangeland. This is a throwback point-and-click adventure game, very surreal, kind of depiction of an afterlife kind of setting. This is published by Wadget Eye, but I forget who it is who actually developed it. It's somebody who is an old hand, but incredibly cool scenarios, very just like entrancing visual design, and the puzzles have a good amount of rigor to them. There were some that genuinely felt like huge eureka moments for me as I was finishing those up. Yeah, Strangeland.
Yeah, that Will is a huge fan of the Wadget Eye developers and a huge fan of rigor in adventure game puzzles. So I'm really excited to try this as well. It's all things I haven't played this month. It's real exciting for me. And then our premium episode for October is The Evil Within 2.
Yeah. Open world follow-up to The Evil Within. The Evil Within, a game that I don't care for very much, but was, Resident Evil 4 guy. Fuck, what's his name?
Mikami?
Yeah, Shinji Mikami. He developed the first one. A new team picked up for the sequel. This is kind of an open world survival horror game, which is interesting. I think they handle it very well. And there, again, are lots of cool, surreal scenarios, but without the instant death horseshit in The Evil Within 1.
Yeah. All 3 games that I am interested in, but have not played.
Yeah.
This is a cheeky little Cole month because while Cole picked Devotion, Cole picked all 3.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's okay. It's a little cheeky.
Yeah,
it's a little cheeky.
Well, I put my list on the I put my list on the spreadsheet, and I was like, we can talk about this. And he said, "Oh, these 3 work." I'm like, okay.
Yeah, and you put on your sailor suit and got out your lolly.
Yep,
and just it goes a little stinker. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Also for Evil Within 2, you watch if you're give Evil Within 1 a shot if you want to. Like if you have it around, play it on casual because it's already hard enough. I'm talking like you have 2-3 bullets at a time at most. Usually, like and instant death is kind of shitty. Try the DLC if the main game doesn't work for you, and always fall back to the cheat code, which is like a YouTube that is just a plot summary, because very little of 1 has to do with 2.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a shot, just because I've always, it's been on my list forever, and just got scared off it. But I have that weird thing where I want to play the first one before playing the second one. Yeah, so I'm at least going to give it a shot, but who knows?
Yep. Yeah. So. And October the 15th, if you want to write in about any of those.
Yeah. We have, so in terms of admin, thanks everybody for listening. If you want to hear our premium episodes, which are that Wario Land 4 episode we talked about, Carrion, Evil Within 2, and many others, you can do so by becoming a patron. If you go to patreon.com/Duckfeed.tv, give us $5 a month to get access to all those, as well as Unfilmable, our monthly horror movie podcast, which is a hoot, and a bunch of other bonus stuff. You can also leave us ratings, reviews on Apple Podcast or Podcast Addict or wherever you find reviews. If you are a non-straight, non-white, non-cis dude who is making stuff and would like us to highlight your project, send me an email at gary@duckfeed.tv. Thought I had one for this episode, but I have not. This is my fault. So I probably will end up reading this one, but I have not done a FASH screening I just want to check them out and make sure that we're not promoting somebody harmful. This is just me being paranoid. I do my best with those. If anything ever happens and we call somebody out and it turns out later that they're a shithead, please give us the benefit of the doubt that's ignorance. Like, I'm going to try with those, but I can't make it a full-time job to do background checks on people who send me an email. So I'm going to do my best. But this is one I don't have any doubt about this person. I just need to do my diligence and did not get a chance to this morning.
Yeah.
So no highlight this episode, but the tank is getting low. So if you have anything, hit us up at Gary@Duckfeed.tv. Please
do. That's everything, I think. We'll see you next week for Bug Snacks, which is going to be an interesting one, I think. Mechanics
Light, fun plot to talk about.
Yeah. So I think that's everything. Thanks everybody for listening.
Yeah, we appreciate you. Take care.